There are about 70 to 80 exotic weapons within Destiny 2. Now, obviously not all of them are going to be the best, and obviously not all of them are going to be the worst, but there's going to be a section of them that are sort of in between. And in this little area, I think that there are some exotics that are underappreciated, both for PvP as well as PvE. Today I'm going to discuss 10 of the underappreciated or forgotten about exotic weapons. This can range anywhere from them being just a little underappreciated in PvE, maybe a synergy that you might have missed, or in PvP, something you might be sleeping on. I'm also going to give some pointers as to what makes each of these weapons so good, or some stuff to keep an eye out for. Let's start with this severely underrated weapon known as the Ace of Spades. That's a joke. Guys, that's a joke. Calm down. The Two-Tailed Fox. The Two-Tailed Fox in PvE, especially with the recent changes that came to our subclasses, both Solar and Void, has some serious potential that I think people have just forgotten about. Did you know that if you are running the correct aspects and fragments of which you can see on screen here, especially on your Hunter, you are able to get this weapon to grant you invisibility as you get kills with this thing, or reload this weapon from reserves. That's right, effectively, this weapon will have an infinite magazine, assuming you have infinite amounts of targets that can survive its blast. This is great for those chunkier type enemies. As you're getting tags with the suppression from the fragment that you're seeing on screen there, it will refill your weapon, allowing you to keep firing this thing. It's unfortunate that this weapon's second rocket doesn't actually cause scorch, it's just a generic burn, but regardless, can be great for particular activities. Next, the Jade Rabbit. Now, I know this exotic is not necessarily the most exciting, but with the changes that came to Flinch, the Jade Rabbit is absolutely crazy. I'm serious when I say this. This might become my mainstay weapon. I love the Mida Multi-Tool. I have well over 20,000 kills in Crucible with the Mida Multi-Tool, and this thing is terrifying. The reason for this is that Flinch does not exist in this weapon's repertoire. It is something that this weapon does not experience. All I have for this setup is you're seeing the gameplay in the background here is a simple 6 resilience and a singular, just one unflinching mod on my chest, and you can see I am taking damage and my reticle is not moving. On top of 100 aim assist and the ability to flinch enemies of your own with high caliber rounds, you really need to give the Jade Rabbit a try, even outside of those really long range maps. Let's talk a more niche weapon here, something you don't see very often except for the more crazy minded, the Cerberus. Now, a bit of an odd choice, I'm sure, but the Cerberus, especially with the recent changes in PvP to shotguns and special ammo in general, could be a little bit of an under the radar choice, as it absolutely shreds things in close quarters, and best of all, it doesn't take special ammo, so you can continuously get more and more kills. Pair this thing with a slightly longer range weapon and you could find some serious success. I really wish they would change the catalyst to this thing, as it just seems like an absolute waste, but regardless, give this weapon a try. You might be pleasantly surprised how often you're able to shut stuff down. Coming back to PvE for a minute, can we talk about the Hardlight? Now, Hardlight, again, not the greatest, definitely understand that, but when you're in an activity that has a lot of different shields, match game enabled, as well as your loadout being locked, the Hardlight is one of your best options. I would of course like to also point out the fact that things like the Dead Messenger exist, as well as the Borealis, but Hardlight is a primary weapon, so if you're worried about running out of ammo, this is a great way to go. Not to mention, it over-penetrates targets, causes damage to a lot of different things in the room, so it's something to keep an eye on. Something I definitely think, especially with the mods that we have for Overload Auto Rifle, might be something to at least keep in the back of your mind as you're going into some of these activities. Back to PvP, this is a weapon that ironically has been picked up a little bit in the PvE community, and that is the Outbreak Perfected. Outbreak has recently received a serious buff within PvP, and I haven't seen really anybody talk about it. This weapon is far more forgiving to the head now, so you can actually miss a shot or two hitting the body and still hit your optimal TTK. There's actually a secret hidden perk with this weapon, where as you continue to fire, it has what is effectively a pulse rifle version of dynamic sway, whereas the more you fire, the more stable this weapon is. Even though, I'll put it this way, even though this weapon has on paper a lower stability stat than the Bad Juju, this weapon feels more stable than the Bad Juju. At least it could just be me. Let me know in the comments if you have a different type of opinion. Kills you get with it will allow you to get those Siva nanites, which can help clean up the next person or start your next kill, so it's a little bit easier. This weapon feels fantastic because obviously it is a lightweight weapon, giving you that slight boost, and the buff that came to lightweight pulses in general make this a lot more forgiving to your aim. Back into PvE, Thunderlord. I understand that this is definitely more of an ad clear exotic, but especially in things like legendary lost sectors, especially if there's a Singe enabled, the Thunderlord is hard to match when you've got a requirement for arc damage. The Thunderlord, as you continue to get kills, effectively causes targets to explode in arc light, and it also allows you to cause these arc explosions on targets if you continuously nail them in their crit zone. It's not the best option for sure, but that's what this list is all about, is those options that might be really good in particular situations. And more than anything, I'm really interested in seeing how this weapon shakes out when we get Arc 3.0. I'm really curious if those Thunder Strikes are going to have some synergy. Speaking of arc weapons, Symmetry, a weapon that is just so hard to place in the meta. It can be absolutely terrifying if you can get this thing stacked up, because at 7 stacks, you switch over to the Revolutions mode in PvP, you will begin to 2-tap Guardians. The drawback is that it is a projectile-based weapon, but it does have a bit of AoE to make up for it. The thing that makes this weapon unusual that isn't immediately obvious is that the flinch this weapon causes is not traditional. It doesn't cause an up and down flinch or a traditional linear flinch. It actually will flinch your aim sort of to the left and right, as if you're getting shot in the side of the head, even if somebody's looking straight at you. It's a really odd attribute. I don't know what exactly causes that, but it makes it really hard to snipe this weapon. With sniper rifle flinch changes being really dominant in the right hands, this can be an okay way to actually counter them. This next weapon, it feels like a crime this weapon isn't being used more. Cryosthesia. While I would be the first to tell you that this archetype is not the best for PvP as it is in the precision frame, which is a bit slower than some of the other weapons, and of course we've got things like Drang that exist, the Cryosthesia can be an absolute monster. Take a look at some of the gameplay you're seeing in the background here. This is all set up from the Cryosthesia, and I think that that's really where this weapon shines, is a setup tool for the rest of your kit. Getting that freeze off basically for free can allow you to chain it into other things. In this case, a one-shot throwing knife to the head, which can then proc my blunt execution round BXR, which allows me to basically delete the next person, dealing well over half their health if I can get that headshot off. It is a nasty combo that we featured actually in a previous video in our spicy clips. Ironically, the rest of this list is sidearms, and you probably might be able to guess what the next one is. That is the Devil's Ruin. Devil's Ruin is so underappreciated, as it is effectively a special weapon that takes primary ammo. I don't say that lightly. In the right hands, this weapon is terrifying. As soon as you learn to master the charge up time with this thing, you're going to just laser beam things down with ease. The Devil's Ruin also is in the same exact archetype as something like the Drang, so your TTK theoretically could be exactly the same, assuming you're decent with this weapon. The thing that makes this weapon a little bit odd, and I think this is where you're going to need to master it, is that this weapon actually fires on the trigger release, not the initial trigger pull, just because of the way this weapon works. But seriously, give this weapon a try, put a holster mod on for sidearms, let this thing load just a single shot, hold the trigger, and let the laser beam do the work. It is just so freaking good when you get it down right. And for the last weapon on this list, there's a reason I put this so far down, because I think people are starting to realize how strong this weapon really is, especially with the special ammo changes. That is the Forerunner. The Forerunner has one of the fastest TTKs for its range in the game, and it really doesn't require that much setup. It's very forgiving, the scope is nice and clear, and it's got pretty good hip fire. The thing that of course pulls people away from this weapon is that the skill requirement to make this weapon really sing is quite high. I do see a lot more people running the Forerunner, but if you haven't given the Forerunner a try recently, definitely give it a shot. It is the primary ammo killer, and there's a lot more primary play that's going on right now. I hope you enjoyed this list. If you think I've got something wrong, or if you've gotten a suggestion of your own, leave it in the comment section down below. Make sure you're subscribed. Bless your faces, and deuces.